Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you details of key national and international issues. Now, continuing with our series of Decoding the Union Budget, today we're going to talk about the infrastructure sector. In fact, this year's budget has continued the thrust on infrastructure. There is a sharp increase in the allocation for highways, rural roads, housing, transport, cargo terminals, potable tap water connections and 5 river linking projects as well. The PM Gati Shakti master plan for expressways will be formulated in 2022-23 to facilitate faster movement of people and goods. Now, the government has also announced to provide an alternative option to the guideline of seeking bank guarantees for infrastructure projects and replacing them with surety bonds. Infrastructure financing has also been mainstreamed with particular focus on environment and sustainability, as is evident from the budget announcements around green bonds, a focus of National Infrastructure and Investment Fund and National Small Industries Corporation Fund of Funds on the renewable sector. Now, to understand more in detail about what has actually happened here and what's the focus area when we talk about infrastructure sector, we're joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with, we have with us, in fact, in the studio, Mr. Shailesh Pathak. He's the co-chair of the Transport Infrastructure Committee in FICCI. We're also joined by Mr. Saurabh Sarnyal, Secretary General, PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Mr. M. Ramachandran is also joining us. He's former Secretary in the Ministry of Urban Development and Housing. Welcome, all of you gentlemen. Let me begin with you, Mr. Ramachandran. Let's first start by understanding, a bit more about those interesting and powerful numbers or figures when we are looking at the infrastructure sector in this particular budget. One, the rationale, and two, the distribution. How do you look at it?
As far as I'm concerned, this is a much desired push for infrastructure, which is somewhat long overdue. And it's satisfying in the sense that at a time when Corona has hit the economy, the finance minister has been able to find the resources to take up more infrastructure work, which means more activity and more employment. And also in the process of becoming an advanced economy, I think what is called world-class infrastructure is a must. And within that infrastructure also, as rightly mentioned, the thrust is on those 7 areas, starting with the roads, where substantial work is to be undertaken. And all those critical areas for the economy, I'm sure my co-panelists would agree that when there is manufacturing, when there is generation of activity, what is required is it's a proper movement and movement of goods and services and movement of people as well. For that, to expedite that process, there is a lot in the agenda which is proposed, whether it is roads, railways, even airports. There are a large number of airports which are waiting for upgrade. There is a support for that. Mass transport is something very critical for our economy. So as rightly mentioned, what should be the agenda for the next 25 years? That starting point can be seen in this budget, and particularly moving to the other side, slightly away from the PM Gati Shakti, if I could put it like that. As far as our cities are concerned, there is a vision which is envisioned in this budget speech. What do we need to do if cities have to be livable, if cities have to have proper atmosphere, what needs to be done? So starting with the process of urban planning, what all can be done, that has been outlined. And for the first time, I find that the importance of megacities has been underlined, and there is a discussion about how cities should become more active and doable. And I do hope that beginning, which has been indicated by the finance minister, will lead to a system where city governance will undergo a change, which is a must in today's scheme of things. So whether it is urban or rural, when it comes to infrastructure, if we look into these 2 buckets, there is a whole lot of activity which is proposed. It becomes a question of how best we can take it forward and how best we can implement it.
Indeed, the implementation part will be really, really crucial there, but a holistic move there. And Mr. Sanal, I'd like to bring you in here in terms of, the way industry looks at it. Of course, the focus and the thrust is pretty much visible, but it also underlines the continuity when we're talking about the infrastructure sector. And if you take a cursory look at what has happened in the previous budgets or, what has been done with the infrastructure sector, this particular budget takes it a few more steps forward.
Yes, I would first like to congratulate the Honorable Finance Minister for the exceedingly balanced budget which she has come out with. In fact, she is holding the record of delivering the longest budget speech of 91 minutes. in a very short time. In fact, the budget was over by 12:30 on the 1st of February in the afternoon, and making the introduction of the digital rupee massive push to the infrastructure development, which I'll be talking about subsequently, an announcement of the minimum support price of worth rupees 2.37 lakh crores to wheat and paddy farmers. They stood out among the other budget proposals. Now, talking about the infrastructure, to facilitate faster movement of people and goods, the PM Gati Shakti is encompassing the 7 engines of the multimodal connectivity. This is a great initiative for the states with speedier implementation of development projects through technology, through which almost 20,000 crore will be financed by the government to speed up this project. Now, this is going to provide large jobs openings, because the industry which is involved, the EPC companies which are involved, they are going to be hiring manpower for this, skilled as well as unskilled manpower. There will be huge push and a cascading effect in the jobs, in not only the jobs but also in the connectivity. And with the government support coming in such a big way, Gati Shakti is going to be the way forward, and it is going to be the game changer in our country in the next 5 years. And secondly, the recognition of infrastructure development by the budget from rupees 5.54 lakh crores to rupees 7.5 lakh crores, a 36% jump is itself phenomenal. I mean, this has never happened in any budget over the last a decade or so, that so much of push has been given in the infrastructure. The expressways will be augmented by 22-23 to facilitate faster movement of people and goods. The national highways network to the tune of 25,000 kilometers will be expanded within this year itself. Contracts to be awarded in 22-23 for implementation of multimodal logistics park at 4 locations through PPP mode. Again, is going to be a game changer, because large corporates are going to jump in.
Indeed.
And there again is an avenue for mass employment opportunities as well as growth to this sector.
Indeed. Those are the focus areas. You're right, Mr. Sanal. I'd like to jump in here, and then we'll come to the other parts as well. But since you're mentioning the transport infra there and the Gati Shakti master plan, I'd bring in Mr. Pathak here. Mr. Pathak, the Gati Shakti master plan, when we look at, and the transport sector, the mention there and the focus there, it looks like that is the key.
I'd say the union budget of this year is a continuation of the union budget of last year, as in fact the finance minister herself said. And the 3 broad strands that I could see, one is on mobility and logistics. The other is on energy, particularly green energy. And the third is on implementation at speed and scale. So let me begin with Gati Shakti. Gati Shakti is all about mobility and logistics. As we know, as you said, logistics is all about moving a person or a product from place A to place B in the least possible time, in the least possible cost. And this has been historically a weakness in India. If we produce something in Coimbatore, can I reach it to a market in Delhi in the least possible time and cost? The answer is no. And Gati Shakti, as was rightly said by other panelists, combines these 7 engines and gets a coordinated approach among 16 government ministries in the Government of India. And I have been part of some regional workshops that the Government of India had with states on Gati Shakti. And the entire master plan and the portal that is being developed by BISAG and in Ahmedabad, I think we are in for a very, very good process of planning, financing of innovative kinds, and execution at speed and scale in the mobility aspect. The second I mentioned was energy, especially green energy. And there is where Mr. Ramchandran's point about urbanization comes in. A lot of our problems in cities, including energy and pollution, will go away when we switch to green vehicles and we have a battery swapping program, energy as a service. And the third is how can we, move ahead and get all this done in the next few years. So in the last 18 months, I think that the 4 N's that we have received from the Finance Ministry, the National Infrastructure Pipeline, the National Monetization Pipeline, the National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development, and the National Policy and Program Management Framework. So what to do is answered by the NIP and the NMP. How to finance it is answered by the NABFID, the DFI. And now it's all about how to get it done.
Okay. We'll come to the financing part as well, because there are some very interesting aspects there. But since you also mentioned that, and Mr. Ramchandran also referred to it earlier in terms of urban development, Mr. Ramchandran, I'll come to you. The finance minister made it very clear that the planning has to be focused upon when we are talking about urban development, and the planning should lead to sustainable development of not only mega cities, but also tier 2 and tier 3 cities. That is one part. The second part is the focus on the PM housing project there. That's of course one of the key cornerstones of this government.
The way I look at it is, as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm very happy to see that the urban requirement has got focus in this budget speech, in the sense that there is a policy direction. As you referred to, the urban planning as a process is something which we quite often see as what the town planners do. It is much, much more than what the town planners do, much, much more than what a master planning process is. It's a question of fitting in everything which a city needs and where a city depends, or into one scheme of things. So if we are successful in addressing that, the city would grow differently compared to today's situation where there are all sorts of issues. And that's why we ended up with these problems of slums, people not having houses. Even if they have some sort of a house, there is no water available. They have to walk a certain distance to get water, especially the women of the house had to undertake those tasks. So I'm glad the government has its priorities very clear. First, Swachh Bharat, and then housing for all. So that is reaching a level. So housing for all, I think, will get delivered in a very, very limited time now. And now it's a question of Nal Se Jal. That is, every household, whether it is small, big naturally manages to get it, should have a tap water at its facility, even if it's for limited number of hours. Then comes now, in today's scheme of things, mobility has become very important. As Shailesh was mentioning, in cities, we want to reach another point from one point in the quickest possible time. Today, it's a question of taking how much time, what is the mode available, personalized vehicles, they're crowding the roads do not have the capacity, pollution issues. So one solution has been worked out by having bus rapid transit system that is in limited number of cities. Metros, again, limited number of cities, but these are huge investments. So the direction which is given, that go for green energy, go for sustainable transport for areas, all this will have to get incorporated into a scheme of things whereby it is laid down as to how the cities will grow. Now, it's a sad reality that of the total number of cities and towns we have, only about 1/3 have master plans. Even when we have master plans, are they being implemented properly? Do they reflect what is required in different parts of the city in a proper sense? We are limited to residential areas, non-residential areas, commercial areas, and things like that. But what about movement within these?
Okay.
Localizing what a person or a family needs in that particular area. Have we been successful in that? So one has been talking about transit-oriented development and other faster modes of connectivity and things like that. But all these have to be done together. And I think the next step in that process, first, a high-level committee is to look into this process of how this is to be done. Then it's a question of once the committee comes up with recommendations, what sort of quantum change can happen as far as city governance is concerned.
Okay.
And I would think, and there is a reference in the speech to the megacities also, megacities are more or less becoming very unmanageable. So what sort of a governance system? Don't we need to think in terms of some sort of change in governance so that the common man, whatever he or she desires, becomes available rather than go to a corporation office or a councillor's place or so and try to get things done.
Better to manage.
Another component in this whole process. So once we succeed in having a regime for proper governance of cities, which would naturally include how the cities are to grow, because these days what happens is we just add the peripheral areas to the main city and we say the city is expanded. But does that answer the question? What about sewage issues of that area, waste management, water availability, future requirements? Because water and all, we have to plan for the next 10, 20 years so that it is available in those regions. Hours of supply of water, avoiding wastage of water, moving in the direction of zero waste. These are all requirements of the future, which
Indeed.
are not really getting addressed in today's mad scheme of things, if I could put it like that, because it's day-to-day management. Today there is a water problem here. Today there is a traffic congestion here. How exactly to address that? So all these whole lot of issues with which the city governance is supposed to struggle today.
So
How can
basically,
that
what
be
you're pointing out,
properly
Mr.
managed?
Ramchandran, is that the long-term planning is the key when we are talking about urban development, and that is what seemingly the focus area here is also. But Mr. Sanyal, you were earlier referring to some key aspects vis-a-vis the infrastructure sector, and Mr. Pathak mentioned the financing part. Now, we would like to understand the industry's perspective from both of you. I'll start with you, Mr. Sanyal, not only vis-a-vis the financing thing, but also the move to put in place an alternative mechanism to the bank guarantee system as well.
See, this is a very good move where the bank guarantee system, in fact, PhD Chamber had taken up the issue very, very vehemently with the Ministry of Finance for doing away with the bank guarantee system, and now it has come to being in this budget. It's an excellent idea, especially for the MSMEs. This will help them to raise capital and the working capital, basically.
Okay.
They don't have to, large number of funds to the tune of 50 to 60 crores used to get blocked in the BGs. So this is because the MSMEs have to make FDs or term deposits and leave it with the banks. So this is a great help which the MSME will get, other than the ECLGS scheme where the extension of another 50,000 crores has been added, and one more, the duration also has been added to till 31st March 2023. So this is going to be a very big
and there is a specific PLI scheme for manufacturing vis-a-vis the solar industry there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And setting up, in fact, not only that, the high-level panel which will be set up for the urban planning, which Mr. Ramchandran also mentioned, with an allocation of 19,500 crore, and it will be included in the performance-linked incentive in the solar PV module manufacturing. For that also a high-level panel will be set up. So these are some very good initiatives which have been taken. Use of public transport in urban areas will be promoted, and battery swapping was already brought out by another speaker, Shaileshji, to allow the electric vehicle charging stations for automobile. These are very good initiatives which are already, in fact, happening in some of the emerged economies, and it is very highly commendable to hear the Honorable Finance Minister speaking on these lines that within this year they will set up this. Also, the 80 lakh dwelling units within this year, which low-cost housing, which will be given to for the masses, for the EWS category especially. The long-term plan was for building up 8 crore houses, dwelling units, but now within this year they will be producing 80 lakh houses. That is again a very big initiative, which is going to go a very long way.
Okay. Mr. Pathak, you mentioned and you finished your earlier comment with this aspect of financing. Now, your views there on not only the industrial financing part, but as Mr. Sanyal was referring to, that the alternative mechanism vis-a-vis the bank guarantees will free up a huge amount of money that can then be put in use when we're trying to talk about infrastructure development and the investment there as well.
I'll just take 30 seconds to repeat our thank you to the Union Finance Minister and the Ministry. In November, 17th, 18th November, there was a specific high-level consultation between bankers, industry and senior government officials. And I was representing FICCI, and I was the first speaker from the private sector. Half my time went on how to get a substitute for bank guarantee. And we had suggested surety bonds. 16th of December, the chairman of FICCI actually met Finance Minister in person and suggested this. And 1st of February, we have a solution. So this is a government that is receptive and quick to act. So that's a major problem solved for the construction industry in particular.
Okay.
On the overall financing piece, I would say that it is no longer a problem. We have the DFI, the National Bank for Financing Infrastructure Development. Mr. Kamath has been appointed chairman. Today, I think, or yesterday, they have floated the ad for the managing director. So that's going to do 3 lakh crore. And if you really look at it, the green sovereign bond scheme is all about climate financing, which will be raised by the Government of India and given to PSUs for climate compatible projects. Can we find the money? The answer is certainly. Can we spend the money is the bigger challenge.
Okay.
And to that extent, I'll just give a couple of examples here.
Please.
Purvanchal Expressway has been constructed in the last 12 months. Now, this amount of money, and Purvanchal connects the poorer parts of eastern UP to the rest. Now, we might have spent 100 rupees on Purvanchal Expressway, but that will lead to at least 500 rupees of private investment and job creation coming in that entire route and really benefit the poor. Example number 2 is the Mumbai-Pune Expressway was inaugurated in 2002. Now, we haven't had a second or a third expressway between Mumbai and Pune, but the cities of Mumbai and Pune have grown like this. So, most infrastructure in the trunk infrastructure phase, which is highways, railways, pipelines, transmission lines, all this will get done in the next 10 years. And as the Honorable Prime Minister talks about the Amrit Kal over the next 25 years, cities will continue to grow. And therefore, this attention to cities is welcome. At the same time, let's not forget that this budget provides 60,000 crores to give tap water to 3.8 crore rural households. And just to give you a number, there are 19 crore rural households according to the Jal Jeevan Mission. 2.5 years ago, Vishalji, only 1 out of 6 rural women had tap water in their homes. Today, 3 out of 6 have.
That's a commendable improvement.
It's amazing. And in the next 3 years, all 6 will have. So this is far away from all of us who speak in English. But that woman who's had to carry water from a river or a well, he will never forget this.
Indeed, indeed. But, coming to one last question here, and that's really important because Mr. Sanyal also mentioned it and you also referred to that. And that's something, the buzzword as far as this budget is concerned, that is the steep hike in capital expenditure, the CAPEX, around 35.4%. That shows that the government is willing to invest. The public investment is there. Now, the question is, will the private industry, meet the government halfway through this?
So that private investment will not come in infrastructure. As I, talked about the Purvanchal Expressway, the private investment will come along business units on both sides of the expressway, which is why the multiplier effect. Couple of numbers here. We have 2.2 times the number, which is, currently 7.5 lakh crores. If you include the grants in aid to the state governments, it's even higher at 10.48 crores, which is 4% of GDP. But the interesting thing is incentivizing states. So NHAI, for instance, goes up from 57,000 crores to 134,000. That's well within the Government of India's purview.
Okay.
But state governments are getting 100,000 crores of incentive for better infrastructure spend. And that's part of this 10.48. And ultimately, infrastructure projects will be delivered in states and cities. That is where action on the ground will happen.
And that will ultimately lead to private investment in various other areas, as you're pointing out, closely interlinked. Of course, one thing leads to another there. Thank you so much, Mr. Shailesh Pathak, Mr. Sanyal there as well, and Mr. M. Ramchandran for sharing your views and insights when we're talking about the infrastructure sector, decoding the budget, which we've been trying to do to try and figure out as to what exactly has been done by the government in this particular budget, what are the key focus areas, and infrastructure being one of those focus areas there. How will it happen in terms of money which has been allotted, in terms of its implementation, and also its effect, the multiplier effect on various other sectors and aspects of the economy as well. We'll come back again with a different issue. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.